Havai Mangalam, Padam Havai Mangalam.
Jain. Thank you
Jai
so
Jai.
much. Thank you so much. And I'll ask Chris Jane Miller, who is the organizer for Arihant Academy, to welcome everyone. And then we'll have a round of introductions, conversations, and then we'll get into our discussion for today. So Chris, over to you.
Jai Jinendra, thank you so much, Manoj. And I just want to briefly thank all of you for attending this course, Jain Path to Jain Way of Living. I won't tell you about the course. You'll hear about that from your instructors, your wonderful instructors. But I just really want to emphasize how lucky we feel to have both our instructors here, as well as you, the students, because really our goal here at Arihant Academy for courses like this was to be able to democratize these teachings and make them available all around the world. And this class in particular is particularly exciting because I've heard so much about earlier versions of this class and ways it's been taught by both Manoj and Yogendra. And I feel really lucky that we are able to have this on the Arihant Academy platform. I just want to let you all know that behind the scenes, if you ever need anything, both the instructors and the students, and you need some help that for something that you can't resolve, you always feel free to reach out to me, to Arihant Academy. Some of you have my contact information, but just know that we're here to support you fully. And we really want you to enjoy this class as you learn how to really apply Jain principles in everyday life, which is really what we're trying to do at Arihant Academy, is provide that opportunity. So with that being said, I will just turn it back over to you, Manoj, and I just thank you so much again for all your efforts for putting this course together, and welcome you all. And I have to run into another meeting, but I'll say Jai Jinendra, and I will see you all soon.
Okay, wonderful. Jai Jain, Chris, and thank you so much for having the Arihant Academy platform host us and host all the individuals. And I hope others who are on the call, if they have not had a chance to look at the Arihant Academy other menu of courses, that they will. So with that, I want to begin with a round of introductions and have people share who they are, where they're from, and what they're doing. This is a conversation that we want to have about Jain religion, about where and how we see the religion and our lives, how those two intersect. I do want to take a minute and introduce the Jain Path team, and Vitika Barjatia is here. Vitika, if you want to say hello to our group. And also Edwin Rodriguez is here as well. So Vitika.
Jai Jinendra, everyone. I am Vitika Barjatia and I am from Indore, India.
Okay.
So welcome everyone to Jain Path as well as Arihant Academy. It will be a great journey with everyone with Jain Path.
So there are lots of things that we'll be doing and engaging in, and Vitika is going to be able to help you, and share many of those things. And also on technology front, Edwin Rodriguez, also based in India, is on the Jain Path team. And Edwin, go ahead.
Jai Jirendra to all. My name is Edwin. I'm the IT consultant and with Dr. Jain from last, I think, more than 15, 20 years now. Thank you.
Great. And then the other co-instructor with me, Yogendra Jain. Yogendra Sahib is my older brother. And in fact, he had to take an urgent flight and he is in the air in a good way. So he's going to try to join, but I may be not able to join in our first session. So we're going to talk about lots of things of what we're going to do, but in the first, what I do want to hear from folks is a little bit about themselves, their background, and then we'll sort of share what our objectives are, and then take it at a leisurely pace, the conversation of what we are doing and what we want to do. So I'll ask, just have in order, Anisha Shah, if you would like to introduce yourself and go ahead and unmute and unvideo as well. So, Anisha.
Hey, Jinendra, everyone. My name is Anisha Shah, and I'm from Chicago, Illinois. And looking forward to, I would say, increase my knowledge about the Jainism. And
Great.
yeah, looking forward to.
Okay, and what kind of work do you do, or studying, or?
Currently, no, we have a business, so
Okay.
I just help my husband with the business.
Wonderful.
We have a rental company, and currently I'm recovering from my ankle surgery. So
Okay.
just bad, yeah.
Great. Okay. All right. And then I'll go to Jasmine. So Jasmine, go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself. Yeah.
I'm Jasmine Shah, and I work in Memphis, Tennessee, as an IT consultant. So the Jain way, like I'm looking like how it will be, different, the creative way, how the Jain Dharam will be different, like
Yes.
what we are thinking.
Yep.
So that is what other alternative like.
Yeah. And talk about how it may change and so forth. Okay, great. And then I'm just trying to Jigar Bhai.
Hey, hi, my name is Chigar. I am from Seattle. I work for Meta. And I'm
Great.
looking forward to these conversations.
Wonderful. Okay. And we will be hearing more about your concept of Jainism also. So this is not a one way, right? We
good.
are very keen on saying that, this is the way that we want to be thinking about Jainism, or are we completely, off the wall and so forth. So great. And then Rajesh Shah, Rajesh Bhai.
Okay, my name is Rajesh, and I live in Houston, Texas. I've been part of the Jain Society of Houston for 30 years, and I work at Hewlett Packard and work with the Pachala, trying to make, for the college bound students who are juniors and seniors, make it more relevant. So something they can hold on to and take it with them, because Jain religion becomes very complex very easily, especially when the parents are, doing a lot of practices without forming the fundamentals of it. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Rajesh Bhai, I couldn't agree with you more. And it was in the same light, the reason why Jain Path and Jain Way of Life were developed, and it is a product of the Jaina's Long Range Planning Committee. We've been part of that. Yogan Bhai and I have been part of that for over 15 years. And in that committee, with the very thing that you said, Jainism can be very complex. How do we, for the next generation, develop a modern way of explaining, keeping all of the same, but how do we get a modern way of explaining Jainism to the next generation, and even to the Western culture as well? So absolutely, I think that is an important concept of that we will talk about. And next, Sanjay Bhai, Sanjay Shah from Chicago, I believe.
Jai Jinendra, everyone. My name is Sanjay Shah, and I'm from Chicago, Illinois. And I'm one of the trustee at Jain Temple here in Chicago, and also a business owner. I'm looking forward to learn something more that what I don't know about it.
Okay. And we want to learn from you as well. We know Chicago is a phenomenal center. You have a Pathshala that's incredible. And I will also say, we want to be able to take, and you're free to take any and all ideas from here and then use it in your Pathshala and in your temple as well. Wonderful.
Yeah, our
Yes, please go ahead.
Pathshala Pradeep Bhai. All the credit goes to Mukesh Bhai and Pradeep Bhai for the Pathshala.
Yes, and they were part of a conversation that we had when we did earlier sessions, and they absolutely loved it. So that was extremely good. Okay, and also we have Sonia Kothari. Sonia ji, if you would share.
Hi everyone, my name is Sonia. I'm actually a second-year undergraduate student from Bay Area. I'm studying computer science, and I look forward to learn more about Jainism in this class.
Great. And Sonia, lots of young people have opinions about Jainism, and what we're looking for also is reflections. Does this make sense? So wonderful. Upasna Jain, Upasna ji, please share your background.
Yeah. Hi everyone, Jai Jinendra. I'm Upasna Jain and I live in Plano, Texas. I'm an architect and I work in Dallas, and I'm really looking forward to know more about Jainism here.
Okay, great. All right, wonderful. And I want to ask, Anisha ji, I think we've have we covered everyone? Great.
Yes, yeah, I was the first one.
Yeah, you were the first one. Okay, so I will share a little bit about who I am and my background. My name is Manoj Jain. I'm an infectious disease doctor and based in Memphis, Tennessee, born in India, but been in Boston for about 25 years and in Memphis also for 25 years. So I did all my education and schooling in US. And in the whole process, as we were growing up, my brother and I, we looked at Jainism in a very different light. We saw Jainism not as someone who was growing up in India and they were completely culturally engrossed in it each and every day. The first 10 years of our lives, yes. But then after that, we were in a different culture. We were in the milieu of the Western culture, and to talk about Jainism there was something brand new. And what was very different also was the introduction to all of these concepts of nonviolence or vegetarianism. I still remember that at lunchtime, as a middle school and a high school kid, when I used to have sandwiches, and it was very strange for everyone that I wouldn't be eating school lunches and that I would be eating a chutney sandwich or a peanut butter sandwich was something they knew, but the word vegetarian was non-existent. It isn't like that now, but growing up in that culture is there. So that's a lot of my background, and we've been involved with the Jaina's Long Range Planning Committee, where Deepak Jain, Prem Jain, Sushil Jain, a number of other Deepak Doshi are longtime members. And we have been talking about what does Jainism mean and how do we explain and better understand. So I'm going to share my slides and my screen. I just want to make sure you're able to see my slides. And this is a conversation, so let me know. You can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So again, round of thanks to the Jaina's Long Range Planning Committee. And we will be having 4 conversations. Today is going to be on the AAAs and how we can better understand. So the first and foremost question that comes up is this: what is our objective? And if one line could better describe over the next 4 weeks what we are going to be talking about, it is going to be to discover a modern roadmap of Jainism. Now, some may say, but wait a second, what is wrong with the roadmap that we already have? What is wrong with describing Jainism? Not wrong, but we can look at the ideas and concepts of what the sages have said and how to do it. So it is really not something recreating, but we are, in ways, if I had to say, rediscovering Jainism. And so if you know a lot about Jainism, great. This will be in a fresh way to look at Jainism. If you don't know a lot about Jainism, this will be a way that will be an entry into the depths of Jainism. The question that comes up often is, why even do it? Why even talk about thinking of it in a modern way, a roadmap? And I think the issue comes up is that we want to make our religion more relatable. We want to make sure that we are able to take this as for greater self-reflection as well. Yes, that is what will make us reach our goals, and self-reflection plays an important role. And that is what religion helps us do. Also, we seek in our day-to-day lives, we seek joy, happiness, equanimity. In fact, we'll sort of define these words in the realms of Jainism. What is happiness? Khushi kya hai? We will discover and have a conversation on what is happiness. And then also create excitement and pride. It is a tradition, a religion thousands of years old. And how will it continue unless we have that sense of excitement and pride in our tradition and religion and culture and heritage? How will we be doing this? We will be revealing the Tattva Sutra. So I often say to folks, so I do have done many things in addition to writing for the Washington Post, and also ran for election. And I told folks that if I local election, if I had won that, and if I had to put my hand on a book, would I put my hand on the Bible? No. Would I have put my hand on the Gita? No. On the Quran? No. What book would I put my hand on? And I would say it is the Tattva Sutra. The Tattva Sutra sort of, it in ways, the Bible of the Jains. Yes, there are many other granths, but many of the things that we will be discussing are going to be coming and being relatable to that. And the other way of looking at how we're going to be doing it is people categorizing. You see, religion has done tremendous work in being able to take lots of information and help categorize. And then what we're going to be doing further is going to be also categorizing further. So with that, I will begin, and we will begin our conversation. I also want to welcome Laura Hirschfield. Laura, if you want to take a minute and introduce yourself. We know each other well. She's done tremendous work on nonviolence and is well read on many topics. Laura, you want to introduce yourself to the group, if you can? Yeah.
Sure. Hello, good morning. I'm on the West Coast. Apologies for the lateness, had some car issues. But my name is Laura Hirschfield, currently in Los Angeles. Really grateful to this community. My first exposure to Jainism was through some work with the Ahimsa Center in Cal Poly Pomona. From there, I've done, worked with teachers in India, thinking about nonviolence and its role in, really its role in everything, but thinking like teachers is a great place to start with getting their reflection. How do we bring that into classrooms? And so I've just been doing that work, which I love and I'm passionate about, and always started with like what does this look like in day to day? So really grateful for this opportunity, love to reconnect. So thank you, and apologies for being late.
Okay, no problem. And thank you so much, Laura. And so it's a chance for us to begin and share. So now let us talk, what is Jainism? So what if I were to ask folks their input, tell me, if someone asked you what is Jainism, what would you say? And this is just so we can begin a conversation on what is this. So anyone, please.
Conquering.
Sorry, Rajeshji, go ahead.
Conquering self.
Okay, conquering self. Okay. What? Okay. What else?
Non-violence.
Non-violence. Very good. What else? If an alien came, dropped into your backyard and asked you, what is your belief system? What is your religion? And you say Jainism, and they say, what is Jainism? How do you describe it? Other things?
It's too broad for me right now, but in my head, it's just a way of life.
Yeah. Okay. It's a way of life. Okay, great. What else? Anything else? Idea of
path to moksha.
There's a path to moksha. And who is going to moksha?
The soul. Yeah.
The soul.
Yeah.
The concept of the soul, very distinct from the body, and how one better understands that, because these are fundamental concepts that we get imbibed in when we're growing up in India. But when our kids are growing up here, it's many of these concepts have to be developed. How is the body separate from the soul and its relation? Other thoughts on what is Jainism? So we were confronted with this issue at the Long Range Planning Committee. And what the whole idea was, could we develop an elevator speech? And this is what a group over the past decade has come up with. Jainism is a religion and a way of life, as Laura said, and antiquity being shown for thousands of years, Jainism having real down-to-earth practices, because people understand practices, vegetarianism, forgiveness, meditation, humility, and also environmentalism. Mahavira was the first environmentalist. If you look at many of the scriptures, you can see those elements of environmentalism. And then going into the 3 core principles. What are they? We talked about it just a little. We'll talk about nonviolence, non-absolutism, and non-possessiveness. And we'll see where this came from. And nonviolence is compassion and forgiveness in our thought, speech, and action. And that is why we're vegetarian. Non-absolutism is respecting others' views. Why do things happen the way they happen? And it is being able to see multiple perspectives. And that comes in a non-absolutist perspective, that I am not the one who's going to have the only view and the right view. And we encourage dialogue, harmony with other faiths. Non-possessiveness, the whole idea of living in a material world and defining our relationship with that material world is what Jainism teaches us. That balancing of needs and wants and desires, and our attachment and detachment with the material world. Those are fundamental concepts which are all mental, that come in. So Jainism has those 3 core practices, and they help us manage our, in the traditional word is kashai, krodh, man, maya, lobh, anger, ego, deceit, and greed. what pulls us down each and every day are these things: anger, ego, deceit, and greed. And if we can better manage them, that's what our religion teaches us. It believes in the existence of the soul, and that soul exists in every living being, which is eternal and divine. That soul is, and Jain way of life respects and honors all living beings. We are all interdependent, and by living a Jain way of life, we bring peace and spirituality to our lives and to those. Now I want to ask our group. This is what folks sort of pull together. What is it missing, do you think? And does this elevator speech, which is on a bunch of cards that Jaina put together, thoughts, comments, and questions from the group on this? What do people think?
I think I agree with these 3 points. To me, mostly it's like about non-violence and the non-absolutism, like basically being neutral and being able to control anger, ego, Krodh, Man, Maya.
Okay. And non-violence, Jigar, towards who?
Towards every being, like as much as you can, to the extent,
Good. So we'll talk about that. Non-violence in Jainism is towards who? Yes, towards every being. Okay, very good. And we'll go into the depth of non-violence. What else? Does this work? So maybe let's ask Sonia, does this work as a good elevator speech on what is Jainism?
Yes, I think it does.
Okay. Anyone else?
Can I ask something I've thought about a lot or tried to express, but I haven't been able to do a good job at it, because it says it's a religion and a way of life. Like what? It's almost like what makes it a religion? What's the difference between a religion and a way of life? Because that's, because I identify,
Yeah. So a religion, when one puts it in the terms that we did, was saying it is a religion in a way because it is indoctrinated with the other concepts of a fixed in a structured way of thinking, with scriptures, with a concept of a God, which we can talk about in more detail. And that's where it puts it in the religion, in a faith-based categorization. And a way of life is what brings it into our day-to-day lives of the practices that we talk about. And I think that's why we want to be able to bring both those elements, that there is tradition and longevity of these concepts, and then it is practicalness of day-to-day, that it's not just a mental thing. Great question. Okay. Other concepts and questions on what religion? Okay. A lot of this is discussed in the Jain Way of Life book. And what I will say is there are 2 websites that I would highly encourage people: JWAL, jainwayoflife.org, and it has many of these things. And then also a lot of it is in the Jain path. And all the concepts that we are discussing are well discussed in detail in the Jain path book, which we'll go through as well. Okay. All right. Any thoughts, comments, questions? And then I want to take a little bit of a deep dive on a conceptual model of Jain path and how we can discuss this more. Okay. So what is Jain path? In essence, what we're talking about, Jain path, is a model and a way of trying and in ways of putting together the philosophy, principles, and practices on a common platform. So think about this. What is Jain philosophy? Let's begin with Jain philosophy. Those are some core philosophical principles, which then lead to Jain practices, which we've talked about in more detail, we'll talk about today, which are the triple A's. And then they lead to multiple practices. I would say we can even divide them into 24 practices, such as vegetarianism, forgiveness, and so forth. And all of that then lets us achieve happiness, equanimity, moksha. These words we will unpack over time. And yes, our religion, our way of life has rituals, because rituals make things enjoyable. And even more is our socialization, which is festivals, ways to bring people and others together as well. So with that, as a beginning on what is Jain path, is philosophy, principles, and practices. Now let's add a little bit more content to that structure. When we talk about this model, philosophy, we can put Jain philosophy, all of the tattvas and the dravas and all of those words into 4 theories. I'll say this, I still remember in 7th grade, when I heard about Newton's first law, second law, third law, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. It helped explain so many things. From there, I began to wonder, can we not take many of the things in our religion and put them in the concept of thinking in those theories as well? Can we not be talking about theory of life, theory of karma, theory of soul, and theory of moksha? So all of Jain philosophy, in large part, can be placed in the sets of buckets of those theories. The Jain principles we can put in ahimsa, aparigraha, and anekantvad, the triple A's. And then a number of practices, which we'll talk about in more detail to come. And all of this is driven by Samyak Darshan, Samyak Gyan, Samyak Charit, which is right faith, knowledge, and conduct in our way forward. And so, yes, think about the Jain path as a way of taking the tradition and religion and putting it into philosophy, principles, ahimsa, anekantvad, aparigraha, and practices like vegetarianism, forgiveness, meditation, open-mindedness, balancing needs and wants, environmentalism, trying to put a lot of that and together. And yes, we have our rituals and so forth. So I'm going to pause for a minute, have you ask questions or comments, as we then will go into the details of today, Jain principles. Then we will be talking a week or week after on Jain philosophy. And then we'll also be talking on Jain practices, each one taking depth and how it relates to our day-to-day lives. And we will talk about what is happiness. How does one achieve or strive towards happiness in our day-to-day lives? So I'll pause for that and comments and questions. So I'm going to ask individually. So Sanjay Bhai, what do you think of this model? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it reflects the value of the Jainism. So I think it's perfectly okay.
It works, okay. And Anisha, your thoughts? Does this seem relatable to you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
I was on mute. I didn't realize I was
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, that's yes.
Okay. And another thought process, anything that you would change or add or modify? And what are we missing, do you think, from here? Anyone?
Yeah, this is Rajesh.
Rajesh. Yeah.
my recommendation, I think there's been a lot of focus on happiness, right? And I, happiness is very individual, right? And focusing on happiness is, I just feel that we're bringing
Overdone.
equanimity is awesome. Moksha is great. And happiness is where I kind of stumble upon,
Very good.
Yeah, that's kind of my feedback. I wish I had a better
Okay.
answer than happiness.
Yeah. And so what we will do in one of our sessions is we will work and we'll define what is happiness.
Yeah.
And how it relates to moksha and equanimity and others. So great. All right. Other comments or questions or thoughts from the group?
I also agree with Rajesh's thought around happiness. Like, I think happiness is more around the material world, whereas if we are in moksha, there is nothing. Like, it's more like a state of being rather than it being like happiness or sad. Like, those states don't exist, I feel. As I understand.
Okay.
But I would like to learn more. I think the other thought process that I also wanted to add was, while we go around all these things, I also want to like focus on rituals that we have, like doing puja or things like that, how they would add value, and specifically, like, is that even needed? Like, if we don't do that, but if we still follow like the principles in general, like, is that good enough? I think I also would like you to focus on those, like why they are important and how they would add value on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And what happens is our rituals tend to get lost when we come from India to America. Whereas in India, we're so imbibed in the day-to-day rituals that the principles get lost.
Correct.
And here we get so much into principles that rituals get lost. So there's a delicate balance between rituals and principles. I'll be honest with you. I was an anti-ritual person, and doing my grandfather when I was growing up would do abhishek and the pujas and all that, and I said, what a waste of time. It was like sheer waste of time. The funny thing I realized was what allowed me that moment of tranquility, sort of a self-reflective meditative experience through the time when it was happening. And now what I do is I've started the ritual every evening of 5-10 minutes of aarti. It brings the day to a nice closure, and that it's a ritual. It doesn't do anything more, but it's the importance of ritual, which helps this in this idea of this meditation there, and bringing equanimity to the day as well. So very good point. So great. All right. If Jigar, do you have other comments, questions?
No, I think I'm good for now.
Okay, good. All right. So before we dwell into the AAAs and sort of carry them forward, I want to take a few minutes and talk about how is the ideas of Jain path and what is the crosswalk with traditional Jainism? Some of you may know a great deal about traditional Jainism, but it's really important to know the crosswalk. So here is where we see the crosswalk at. In traditional Jainism, we talk about the dravas. Jeev, Pudgal, Dharms, Akash, Kal. If you know the dravas, that's what it is. In essence, this is all about theory of life, right? Jeev is no different than in areas of biology, chemistry, physics, space, time. If you look at it, and we use these words with our next generation, then they can say, okay, we're talking about theory of life. How does Jainism look at the theory of life? Then we look at the fundamental difference is the Jeev and a Jeev. And that is the difference between the soul. So how do I get to this? It's the following. So I'm a doctor, infectious disease doctor. In fact, I went to round in the hospital this morning, and I saw 20 patients. Just a few days ago in the ICU, I saw a patient critically ill, and then their heart began to not work. So started CPR, right? Got a ventilator in. We had them on a lung machine. We had them then going on a heart pacing machine. We were doing everything. Soon enough, they died. So my question to you is, what is the difference on the few minutes before that we started that CPR to the hours after that CPR and we said that they had died? The fundamental difference is the theory of soul. There was a soul that we believe was there before, and afterwards there was not a soul. That's what we'll discuss in theory of soul. And then theory of karma, the whole idea, very detailed theory, and we'll talk about that. And then the ultimate theory of moksha. So traditional, modern way of life in looking back and forth is there. Also, we can look at how do we take the traditional ahimsa, acharya, satya, brahmacharya, and we put them into the modern way that we want to focus in on ahimsa, anekantvad, and aparigraha, the three core principles in common language: love, ahimsa, anekantvad, respecting others' views, and aparigraha, we share our material with others. And then the day-to-day practices. Yes, vegetarian diet, healthy diet, not eating, drinking filtered water, ways of doing things. Yes, we focus on yoga, forgiveness, compassion, anekantvad, respecting others' views, open-mindedness, and sharing, and so forth. And so, in brief, that is the crosswalk. Comments, questions from the group on the crosswalk of how we can look at traditional and then the modern way of way of life of Jainism. And does this make sense? The crosswalk, does this make sense for folks? Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I think that this resonates, and I think the folks who are born in America or in Iraq, I think is a good way to understand Jainism. Yeah, the principles very well.
So now we're going to go and broadly. So next session, we will focus in on theory of life, theory of soul, theory of karma, theory of moksha. Not at this time. That's the next class. We'll go into great detail. Again, on jainpath.org, the books are there, the words that go with this, and so forth. Today, we're going to talk about the triple A's, ahimsa, anekantvad, aparigraha. So I want to ask somebody, if anyone knows, do they know where ahimsa, anekantvad, aparigraha got started? Where that whole conversation was, or who talked about the triple A's initially? Does anyone know? I didn't know for the longest time, but it really got started from the book Tattva Sutra, Uma Swati's book, translated by Nathmal Tatia. I'll give you a little bit of a story. So Nathmalji Tatia, he's passed away, but when I was growing up in Boston, he was a visiting scholar in his 80s, and that he was in his 80s, and this was in the early, this was also in probably 1990s. He was a scholar working on this book, that which is Tattva Sutra, the manual for understanding the true nature of reality. He was translating the Tattva Sutra. And in his interpretation, he was a scholar of Buddhism, he was a scholar of Jainism, he was a scholar who was by far one of the most learned individuals, and his English was just impeccable. And in that conversation, he wrote this introduction. The central theme of Tattva Sutra themes are non-violence, non-absolutism, and non-possessiveness. This is where triple A's took their birth. Before this, we talked about the 5, and we still do in Jainism, the anuvrats. But the AAA concept really took shape here. Non-violence strengthens the autonomy of life of every being. Non-absolutism strengthens the autonomy of thought of every individual. Non-possessiveness strengthens the interdependence of all existence. If you feel that every soul is autonomous, you will never trample on its life to live. See how nicely in beautiful English language he's taking these things and says and bringing it down to our day-to-day practices. If you feel every person is thinking person, anekantvad, you will not trample on his or her thoughts. If you feel that you own nothing and no one, you will not trample on the planet. In the 2nd century CE, when the Jaina philosopher monk, think about this, almost 2,000 years ago, Umaswati wrote the Tattva Sutra. These principles were the only way to global peace. Today, this is even more the case. These are the only values that can save humanity from the deadly acts of war, economic exploitation, and environmental destruction. So I'll pause with that. Thoughts, comments, questions on where the AAAs came from? Did people know this about the AAAs? Yes, no, maybe?
No, not really. I didn't know about it.
You didn't know. Okay. So I think it's important to get a perspective of history on that. Yeah. Okay. So now, before we go into the AAAs, just a brief introduction to the practices. So each ahimsa, nekantvad, aparigraha lead to what we do the day to day. How does that way of life, what Laura was talking about, it is a way of life. I cannot go in and say, oh, I'm gonna, be, mindful of the soul. I begin to have to do these things in day. I can decide what to eat. This is a decision point. I can decide if I want to forgive. These are ways of practices each and day. I can be compassionate. I can provide service. I can do yoga and exercise. I can be, in my thought, speech, and action, be very careful. I can be intoxicant-free. I can be stress-free. These are all ways that we can take these practices. In ahimsa, in anekantvad, we can see open-mindedness, mindfulness and meditation, respect, humility, straightforwardness, scripture reading, equity, and prayer and puja, the rituals. And then aparigraha, balancing needs and wants, contentment, fasting, austerities, controlling sensual desires, art of dying, charity, environmentalism. So this is just a preview of what's to come in more detail. Any thoughts, comments, or questions on these before we go into the depth? Yes. Okay. I see also Connie has joined in. Connie, if you have a minute, go ahead and introduce yourself to the group. I just noticed that you were in. Go ahead, Connie, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the group. Are you there? You're still muted, Connie. If you would like to introduce, just let us know. Okay. All right. So there are people who are splitters and there are people who are lumpers. People who like to lump everything together to make sense of life. I tend to be one of the lumpers. I like to see where and what is the underlying premise of the triple A's. And what I have discovered and in the scripture readings and so forth is that ahimsa and anekantvad and aparigraha is really talking about equity in our day-to-day lives, and it is the unifying value for the triple A's. But first, before we talk about equity, I think it's really important to talk about the difference. Why not the word equality and equity? What equality means, and maybe I'll get some folks to tell me the difference. So yeah, hi Connie, can you hear us? You can unmute. Yeah, you can unmute and go ahead and introduce yourself just for the group. Can you introduce yourself to the group?
Oh, hi, I'm Connie Steinman. I just got back from crew practice.
Okay, great.
But this is really definitely up my alley because I'm in a work situation where I'm in a hostile environment and it's abusive and this is what I really need to hear.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us. Great. Yeah. Okay, so maybe I'll ask the group, what is the difference in the two photographs, equality, equity? Does someone want to describe what they're seeing here that's different between equality and equity? What do they see?
I don't mind sharing. Oh, good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think equality, they all have equal amount, and then equity is they're given a boost,
Yeah,
depending on
right.
what they are.
What they exactly. So, so this is very critical. So we want to migrate from equality to equity because equity takes into shape the idea of fairness, justice. So all have enough. They can all get to the common goal. So, yeah, Laura.
So I wanted to add too that I've seen this and I've seen another that adds like a third picture that like the wall is missing.
Yes.
Right.
Access.
That like, and that's what justice is. So I think, and that relates to what the nonviolence is too, right? Is addressing the wall in the first place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Imagine now that the wall is down and then there's equality, equity, and there is justice as well as access for all, right? So why am I mentioning this here? Because equity is this universal principle, value rather that has. So what is saying is ahimsa or nonviolence is when we say that my soul and the soul of others, that there is equity in those two, that there is respect for those. Anekantvad is saying same thing, that my perspective and others' perspective, again, all perspectives are respected. What aparigraha is that basic needs, my basic needs and other basic needs are at the same level. And so the equity is a unifying value in all three. And so that's really important to keep in mind as we're moving ahead into our further discussion. Okay, so let us now begin the conversation about the three A's, the triple A's, and how we can better explain the triple A's and what is beginning with ahimsa. So way to look at non-violence is that if one looks at the literal meaning, it means just simply not harming. But what we need to be doing is to thinking that it's not just not harming, it is helping. There are two aspects to ahimsa. And almost all of the Jain scriptures and other scriptures say that. How does one enact or take part in making not harming work in our day-to-day lives? Through our thoughts, speech, and action. So when you go to the airport, this always comes to my mind. And when you go through security, what do you go through? Anyone? What's the security called? TSA. So same thing, thought, speech, and action. If we are mindful of those, our thought, speech, and action, just as almost like a self-security guard, way of evaluating, both in helping and harming, then we will not be revengeful, abusive. We will take actions that doesn't harm any animals. Again, in our ways, in our thought, speech, and action, we will be helpful. So that is what ahimsa is talking about, is not harming, but helping through our thought, speech, and action, and doing it by the self, and and appreciating others as well. So the tree of ahimsa is rooted in equity and equality, with branches of different areas. Thoughts, comments, questions on this? And does this make sense in thinking about ahimsa and nonviolence? Yes? And I assume you can all see the screen fairly well. Yes? You can see my screen well?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. All right. I will share with you a story. Does anyone you can raise your hand and tell me, have you heard of the story of the hungry men and mangoes? There. Some of you may not have. Okay. So this is a story. So there were 6 men who were lost in the forest, and they were for days out there, and they were very, very hungry. And then in a distance, they see a mango tree, and it has lots of mangoes on the tree and some mangoes on the ground as well. And so the first man sees that and he says, I am so hungry, I am going to chop down that tree and eat the mangoes. The second man says, I am so hungry, I'm going to chop the branch and get those mangoes and eat them. The third one says, I am so hungry, I'm going to just take all of the distant branches, break them, and then eat. Another one says, I am so hungry, I am going to pluck those mangoes and eat them. And then the last one says, what? What does the last one say? Anyone?
To collect everything from the ground.
Yes, collect everything. I'm going to collect the mangoes from the ground. So tell me, why am I sharing this story about the mangoes in our conversation with nonviolence?
Not hurting the tree, because it is also the...
Yeah, it's also a living being.
Living being.
Right. So, and the fundamental, have they already chopped the tree down yet?
No.
No.
There was a thought process, and there was this thinking.
Right. They had a thought. Each of them had a different thought process, and then each of them had a speech. So if you go into the theory of karma, the thought, even the mere thought, creates karmas. The speech creates karmas. And then the actions create karmas. Right? So, who is doing the greatest amount of violence of the 6 men?
The first one who said that he's going to cut the tree down.
Yeah, the first one who's going to say and cut the tree down. And obviously the least amount of violence. is done by who?
The
The
ground
one-
scoopers.
Yeah, go ahead.
The ground scoopers and scooping the food off the ground.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this story, and I was saying, in our day-to-day lives, how can we relate to this? And there's so many times that we can minimize the violence in so many ways, right? Even not using excessive plastic, or not using excessive things that will are not necessary, and so forth, that will decrease the amount of violence. Okay. Now going into so we have the tree of ahimsa. But we were asking earlier, and I forget, I think Rajesh had talked about this and so forth. We talked about non-violence towards who? We believe that, yes, non-violence. But when we begin to do non-violence, we've got to say non-violence begins with towards non-violence for the self. So when I have to talk to high school students, I say, why should you not be smoking, doing drugs, excessive alcohol, what? The answer is because you're doing violence towards the self. Why should you be eating a healthy diet? Because you're doing non-violence towards the self. Exercising, yoga, lower stress. Even stress is violence towards the self. So if we put in the context of non-violence, that it is great that you're vegetarian. So lots of stories, right? We have, people at the temple and places where they're doing puja and stuff, and then they come out and then they're angry at themselves, or they're upset, or they're stressed all the time. And you're like, but wait a second, that makes no sense. You could be doing non-violence towards others by not eating meat, or not, all of that, but you're doing violence even to yourself by getting stressful. So the circle of non-violence is doing non-violence towards the self, and then you expand that by caring, empathy, forgiveness, non-violence towards family and friends. And then, as Gandhiji said, also non-violence towards enemies, forgiveness, tolerance, caring, and then non-violence towards animals, right? This is all vegetarianism. And then environmentalism, stopping climate change, avoiding waste, and so forth. So this is the depth of ahimsa and how we can relate it to our the next generation and take the scriptures and put it into context. Comments, thoughts from people? Does this make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to represent how our actions impact the overall planet. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, very well.
Great. And I'll ask someone else, Jasmine or Jigger, your thoughts. Do these things make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And Jasmine, thoughts on that? Does this way make sense? Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
All right. But here is the challenge. I still live, and we all still live in this world of anger, hatred, and deceit. Yes, I got very upset at front desk at an apartment building where they were trying to do some paperwork, and they just couldn't, get the work done. There is a sense of hatred, right? Even when we are in war. So of what is happening in in Ukraine and other places. There's a sense of deceit when one tax season comes and we're like, can I get away with this or not? What our religion teaches us is that there is a way that we can take that anger into forgiveness. And how we do that is this following process. It all begins with this sense of self-awareness. So we have to say, who am I? And we'll talk about that. Who am I? It is the differentiation of the body, the soul, the me, my, us, our, the broader, detaching ourselves, being able to understand who am I, and then going through a self-reflection journey, and then being able to apologize and say sorry, and reconciling and not holding grudge. So anger and forgiveness often begins self-awareness, self-reflection. Hatred, similar. Self-awareness, self-reflection. And in hatred, you criticize not the person, but the action. And we work to overcome our own insecurities. So several elements that play into hatred. And then recognizing the harm and seeing others leads to understanding. Very doable. We can transform people and we can transform ourselves, which is the main reason that the religion is there to help us do that. Deceit, yes, begins with that sense of self-awareness, self-reflection, becoming aware, listening to others, and our willingness to change our attitude and feeling relieved in not lying and then creating a habit. So that's how deceit can become straightforwardness. I'll pause, questions, comments, thoughts on this from folks.
Yeah, the self-awareness is kind of the first step
always
across, I would say, all spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And
So,
then the self-management would be the second phase, right?
Yeah.
Very good.
So Rajesh, let me ask you this. What practice helps you get self-awareness?
Being mindful within that situation.
Yeah.
Being mindful.
Being mindful, right? Yeah. Being mindful. And to be mindful, we have to be being meditative, right? Yeah. Meditation, mindful, we can go into the details of that, but finding that quiet moment and then becoming mindful and then taking that moment in that self-awareness, self-realization to be able to do that. Very good. Exactly. People think that these things aren't possible, but I will tell you this is completely doable. It is, imagine, I think I was talking to my wife, who's also a physician, and I was saying to her, each and every day we go to the hospital and see patients. And then to get there to become a doctor, had spent 12 days, 5 days a week going, 12 years, going to school. And then 4 years of undergraduate, going to college and spending, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And then 4 years of medical school, then 6 years of residency. That much time to be able to just heal a body. How much time are we spending in the self-awareness to heal the mind? If we had even a small amount of training in that, what a great difference. And that is why people like Gandhiji, like Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu, and others, they are able to, it is a no-brainer for them to do this. just like it's a no-brainer for if you're in your profession to be able to take those ideas and practice them and bring them. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, if you're doing some work which is in IT, I could not do that. That it would take me years and years and years to learn how to do it. But same thing, we were able to do and transform. All right, any thoughts, comments, questions? And then I want to go to our conversation, and we'll have another 10, 15 minutes, and we'll finish up on Anekantvad. Seeking, respecting, seeking, and acceptance of multiple viewpoints. Okay, so what is Anekantvad? The second principle. It is understanding and appreciating the continuum of perspectives. So this happens all the time. People feel and think that their way of life, their way of thinking is the only and the right way. I get stuck so often in talking about a patient in my hospital, or talking about if I want to do something, is this is the way to do it, just do it. But lots of times I realize that may not be the best way of doing it. I have to be tolerant of others' views, people of other religions, other perspectives. I have to have a dialogue. I have to be open-minded, and I have to be accepting. Now, this is accepting, but you don't have to agree. So if someone wants to eat meat and they believe that meat will make them stronger, I can say, yes, I accept that you have that view, but I don't agree with that view. So Anekantvad does not mean that you have in agreement with that view. It means that, yes, you may be accepting for that view. Now, I want to take the next 3-4 minutes and go into a very deep dive into Anekantvad. And I know this may get a little bit heavy, so just bear with it, because I think you'll find it really enjoyable in what it will reveal. Imagine this is you, the I. Imagine this is other people. And then we will use graphically arrows of how we see things, perspectives. Ordinary perspective, like day-to-day, we don't think in much detail. Anekantvad perspective, we think of it as in multiple ways, but an absolute, red is absolute perspective, that I feel this way, this is the only way, and so forth. And we're looking at something simple, like a glass of water. What happens? Okay, when I look at it in an ordinary perspective, others look at it in an either perspective. Is this glass of water? We can talk about half filled. Someone says it's half empty. There's not much that goes on. So it doesn't matter. There's no conflict outright. Why? Ordinary, unaware of others' views. We're not really caring about others' views and so forth. But it becomes different. If I have an absolute view on this and I say, look, this is half filled. They say, no, this is half empty, or another view. Then what happens is there is a conflict between me and the other person. Why? We're looking at the same entity, and yet I have taken an absolutist view and they have taken another view. And then there is a conflict between the two. And that leads to disrespect, lack of dialogue, lack of tolerance, closed-mindedness, rejection, and conflict. Yes, this happens very, very often. And absolutist perspective leads to violence and conflict with others. What's another way of doing this? What if we said Anekantwadi perspective? How we look at things. If I begin to say, look, this can be half filled or half empty. It doesn't matter what others will be looking at that, because there will be mutual respect. or at least respect from your side towards others, because I see it in an Anikantvadi view and lead to respect, dialogue, tolerance, open-mindedness, acceptance of others. So what does the principle of Anikantvad do? It allows us to stay and live with others in a respecting manner without causing conflict. That's what Anikantvad can do. And we know the story of the 6 blind men and the elephant, and each touches a different part. They're fighting with one another, and yet they don't recognize the big picture. Thoughts, comments, questions as we do the finishing conversation on aparigraha. Okay, so the third principle of AAA is aparigraha. It is really about knowing the difference in the needs and the wants. And what I mean by that is that we need to have this very clear difference between needs and wants. Yes, there are basic needs. Aparigraha is the interaction of an individual with the material world. What our relationship is with our materials, our devices, our homes. Yes, we have to understand there are basic needs, such as food, shelter, medicine. But then there are necessities as well, education. But then we can go into, I need a bigger, better car, or wants, maybe entertainment. And then there is also greed. So we must understand that it is this relationship that we live in. What aparigraha is saying is, if you put your expectations at the basic necessity level and not at the other level, that is what is going to lead to happiness. But it is not just having the materials, it is your attachment to those materials that is so critical to understand. What do I mean by that? When our soul, our individual soul, is then attached to the body, then we think about our age, our beauty, physical strength as being part of the soul that can't be taken away. When we are attached to our emotions, ego, anger, love, then that is an attachment there. Attachment to family and friends, attachment to money. So what aparigraha is saying is, one, recognize that of needs and wants, and then at the next level, know that the attachment is there. So I'm going to pause with that and have folks ask questions and comments. And then we have a very interesting template that Vitika is going to share with you, in which you will be able to take part in a self-reflection exercise. I'm going to share that in a minute, but other thoughts, comments, and questions from the group.
Sorry, would you mind putting the slides back up really quick, those last two?
Yeah.
Just processing a little bit. Thank you.
Non-possessiveness, aparigraha. And non-attachment. And then before that, the Anikantvad.
Yeah.
And all of these are readily available on jainpath.org, and we will share them with you as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing is in Houston, they actually had to create a law around aparigraha because people were hoarding. Not only, there was one house they found which had hundreds of cats. The person who was living there was dangerous for them and other folks who lived in the neighborhood. So there's a so-called hoarding law in the city of Houston. So resonates really well.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So, what I want to do is then to share exercise that I would love to have you all do. You will be getting this sheet. It is a template on my Jain Path journey. It is, you can watch the introduction, and it just takes you about 5 minutes on each of these 4 sheets, and you can do it over time. On the first page, you do is you write your name, age, and then 3 things you are seeking in your life: personal, professional, and religious life. So for me, seeking to share the treasures of Jainism with others, which I am doing. In my professional work on eliminating tuberculosis from India, and then also seeking to bring joy and happiness in my life and those of others around me. So you will have a chance to do this on your own. It takes just a few minutes. And then there are self-reflections, and there are drop downs, and what you can do is your practice. So from the Jain perspective, what are your practices? So my practice of vegetarianism and vegan. So I am a strict vegetarian vegan. So I'm not a completely vegan, and openly share and encourage my practice with others. So a 5. Practice of forgiveness. I verbally ask for forgiveness, but I'm not quite completely there yet. Balancing needs and wants. I'm still addicted to devices. I will admit, lots of devices I enjoy, from the iPhone to the Mac and others. So I buy what I need and often buy what I want. Open-mindedness. Yes, I proactively listen and understand others. And so I would put a 4. And then my meditation and mindfulness. I practice meditation, mindfulness, at least 20 minutes daily. So I would say I'm in that range of about 5. Environment, I'm not that good as much as my children. And so I would probably say I actively recycle and aware and somewhat concerned. So my mini self-reflection score, there's no good or bad, but you can have a self-reflection score is there. And if you, that takes about 5 minutes to do. If you have time and interested, you can go through the full, and each one is connected to a Jain practice that's there. And then later on in our conversation, we'll come to seeking happiness, where then you can, on a scale of 1 to 5, we'll talk about what is happiness in more detail, and then what is relating to health, affection, security. And then lastly, the worksheet will also talk about priorities, where you can look at and choose in this present time, what is your priority, and then put them what your top priorities are, given those various options and practices. So more to come, and we'll be sharing all those lots of materials with you. The videos of this session will be available as well. And I will pause with that and get thoughts, comments, and questions from others. Yes, Connie, go ahead.
Yeah, do you so this will be on our email or your
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, we will share it on email, which is probably the best, and we'll also have it available in that on the Jain Arihant Academy site as well.
Okay.
Okay.
And as long as I log in, then I have access to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
Great.
also, do you have a class like this in India? Like for
So yeah, we've done a lot of this for India group as well. We've kept this for the US group, but there's a concurrent class that happens in India as well.
Okay.
Great. Comments, questions from group?
This was really great. Thank you so much, Manoj bhai.
Great.
And I'm looking forward so I can explain our Jainism better to our kids. Because that's where like I always fall behind with the arguments with them.
Yes, absolutely. And I would ask that in Chicago with the Parshala teachers, you can do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, great. Jigar, your thoughts? Yeah. It gets into more detail in the philosophy. I think you'll enjoy that. And then we'll go into the scriptures area as well. But I also, yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, no, I think I really liked it. I was actually looking for something like this where we could have an open discussion and understand more around like principles and how we can explain it even to the future generation. So I'm looking forward to the other classes as well.
Absolutely. What I'll share with you is the following. If you go into the Jain Path website, you will see Jain Way of Life, Jain Path, and you can go into the Jain Path book, and page by page, it goes through many of the conversations we've had here. It's lots of those similar slides are there. We'll talk about this karma there, but like ahimsa and ekant, it takes you the tree of nonviolence, the mango stories, nonviolence towards the self, towards others, transforming. So multiple perspectives. So all of that and the words that go through it's readily available on the jainpath.org website. So these are other classes that we had done recently. And then also the Jain Way of Life also has lots of the details, and that's what Yogendra Jain, my brother, has done as well. And this
Got it. Do you have something that is more like for kids, specifically like toddlers? Like how would you go about explaining them these things? And like if there is more interactive, like this we can read and we can try to explain to kids, but like more picture-based stories or things like that, I think that would also be something that would be helpful for. I'm just thinking of different ways.
Yeah. These concepts are hard until about start up middle school, high school is when we really pushed many of these ideas. Before that, stories and all will work really well and so forth.
Got it.
But I would encourage you to take these ideas at your Pathshala, and I'm more than happy to do a session if you pull together about 20-25 people, because that's a good number to do that. And we have Pathshala kids and others to do and have a conversation with them, which is great. And we've done this with Laura and her team in schools and the Jain summer school as well. We've done a lot of these conversations, which are really fun.
Got it.
Yeah,
that book, is that on Amazon?
So it is, and it's hard to get. It's out of print. We're working with the publisher to see if we can get more in print. It's quite expensive, it's about $40-50, but we're getting a cheaper version that would be available too. So, but it's really philosophical and sort of hard. We'll have a lot of the quotes from there in our future classes.
Okay.
All right. So to close us out, would someone like to do the Namokar mantra, and then we can finish up for today? Sanjay bhai, yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, please.
Namo Orientanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Achayanam, Namo Loe Savasaunam, Eso Panchanamokaro, Sava Pava Panasano, Manglanam Cha Savesim Padamam Havai Mangalam.
Jai Jain, everyone, and
Jai
really
Jain.
looking forward to seeing you next week.
Jai
And
Jain, Jai Jain,
okay.
everyone.
Thank you, Manoj bhai.
Thank you, Sanjay Bhai. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right.